Hello, Sinister Sippers, and welcome back to my channel where we dive into the topics that keep everyone doom scrolling, late at night. So not guilty, first off. Before we get started, I want you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button to get a bag full of snacks and drinks. Then take that like button on an adventure to the woods on a hunt for Bigfoot. Okay. There are mysteries that fade with time, and then there are mysteries that seem to grow stronger with every passing decade. Bigfoot is one of those mysteries, despite satellites mapping nearly every corner of the earth. Trail cameras hidden throughout millions of acres of wilderness, drones flying over forests, and thousands of hunters, hikers, and wildlife experts venturing into the backcountry every year. Reports of a massive human like creature continue to surface across North America. Some believe Bigfoot is nothing more than folklore passed down through generations. Others believe it's an undiscovered species of great ape. Some think it's a relic population of an ancient hominid, that's the word, that somehow survived extinction. And then there are those who claim they've seen it with their own eyes. What's fascinating is that one of the most influential Americans in history became connected to this mystery. Not because he claimed to see Bigfoot himself, but because he chose to preserve a story that many people would have dismissed. That man was Theodore Roosevelt, a president, a soldier, a rancher, a conservationist, a naturalist, and perhaps one of the few presidents who spent enough time deep in America's wilderness to understand just how many secrets it could still hold. Today's story begins long before Roosevelt entered politics, because to understand why he took this tale seriously enough to write a book about it, you first have to understand the man himself. This is what I love, because y'all know I love diving into the history. We all remember the Titanic episode. Theodore Roosevelt was born on October 27th, 1858, in New York City to a wealthy family. From the outside, his future looked comfortable, but his childhood was anything but easy. So, Roosevelt suffered from severe asthma. Attacks were so violent that there were nights his family feared he wouldn't make it through the night. They were like, he ain't gonna make it, y'all. This is gonna be it. But he clearly did. Doctors had little they could do beyond recommending fresh air and rest, because this was the 1800s. We didn't have inhalers and stuff. For most children of the era, that diagnosis would have meant a lifetime of physical limitations. Roosevelt refused, though. His father challenged him with words Theodore would never forget. You have the mind, but you have not the body. You must make your body. Roosevelt accepted that challenge with relentless determination. He built a gym inside his home. He lifted weights, practiced gymnastics, learned to box, went hiking, rode boats, climbed mountains. By the time he reached adulthood, the frail child who struggled to breathe had transformed himself into one of the toughest men in America. That determination would shape every chapter of his life. So he graduated from Harvard University before entering politics at 23 years old. That's crazy. I skipped this slide, I'm sorry. He quickly gained a reputation as someone unwilling to tolerate corruption. We need him back today. Just saying. But success couldn't shield him from unimaginable heartbreak. On February 14th in 1884, tragedy struck. His wife Alice had passed away from a kidney disease just 2 days after giving birth to their daughter. And on the same day, only hours earlier, his own mother died from typhoid fever in the very same house. Well, he kept a diary during this time, and his diary entry for that day contained only a single sentence. The light has gone out of my life. I'm pretty sure there was also an X on the page from what I've remembered, because I dive into Teddy Roosevelt a lot. Yes, I was the kid who watched Night at the Museum and thought he looked like Robin Williams even in the past, okay? Devastated, Roosevelt left New York behind. He headed west, not for a vacation, not for politics, but to disappear into the wilderness. He made it to the Badlands of North Dakota, which changed him forever. He purchased ranches, he worked alongside hardened cowboys, rounded up cattle, tracked horse thieves, faced blizzards, crossed frozen rivers, and hunted game. He lived for months in territory where civilization was little more than a distant idea. Unlike many wealthy Easterners who visited the West for adventure before returning to comfortable homes, Roosevelt he embraced the harshness of frontier life. He slept outdoors, he packed supplies across rugged terrain, learned from Native Americans, trappers, guides, and mountain men. He listened far more than he spoke. These were people who survived by paying attention. If they noticed strange tracks, they noticed. They noticed if they heard unusual sounds. They remember those sounds. Roosevelt respected experience, especially in the wilderness, which is key. Like, I think everyone should do that. You should really listen to the people. His love for nature, though, never faded. Years later, after serving as a Rough Rider during the Spanish American War, Roosevelt became vice president. Then, in 1901, President William McKinley was assassinated. Theodore Roosevelt became the youngest president in American history. Doesn't say his age, but he was the youngest in American history, okay? But even while leading the country, Roosevelt never lost his passion for America's wild places. He established 5 national parks. I'll look up which 5 those were because which 5 national parks did he establish? This was Crater Lake in Oregon, Wind Cave in South Dakota, Sully Hills in North Dakota, which was later redesignated as a game preserve, Mesa Verde in Colorado, and Platte in Oklahoma, which is now incorporated into the Chickasaw National Recreation Area. So, fun facts, because I wanted to know. I forgot to include it in the script, my bad. Created 18 national monuments, protected approximately 230 million acres of public land, founded wildlife refuges, expanded the U.S. Forest Service. He believed America's wilderness was worth protecting because he understood something many politicians don't. Even to this day, they don't get it. Once it's gone, it can never be replaced. As someone who's been to Yellowstone, the national park, and Grand Teton, you can't replace that if you ever lose it. There is no getting that amount of wildlife back. There is no amount of work that people could put in if they started developing those areas. Roosevelt wasn't simply a politician who enjoyed hunting. He was also a scientist, a naturalist, and author who wrote dozens of books covering wildlife exploration, hunting, military history, politics, and conservation. He carefully observed animal behavior. He studied tracks, collected specimens, interviewed experienced outdoorsmen. Oh, he's basically Steve Irwin, but like the American version who was also a president. Kind of cool. He knew the difference between exaggerated campfire tales and observations made by seasoned woodsmen, which that's hard to do sometimes. That distinction became important later, because when Roosevelt eventually heard the story of Bauman, he didn't laugh, he listened. Long before television documentaries, internet debates, or blurry cell phone videos, the legend already existed. Native American tribes across North America had passed down stories of enormous hairy beings living in remote forests for hundreds, and in some cases, thousands of years. The Salish called them Saskets. Don't come after me for my pronunciations. I'm so sorry, y'all. The word eventually evolved into Sasquatch, so that one, Saskeets, Sasquatch. Okay, that works. The Lumi spoke of giant forest people. The Cherokee told stories of wild, hairy men living in the mountains. The Choctaw described towering creatures called Nalusachito. And another set of people, the Sistalis, believed that these beings should be respected rather than hunted. Although each tribe had different beliefs, languages, and tradition, many described remarkably similar creatures. Tall, powerfully built, covered in dark hair, walked upright like a man, avoiding contact with people whenever possible. These stories existed centuries before newspapers, Hollywood, and modern folklore. The modern name Bigfoot wouldn't appear until 1958. That year, construction workers building logging roads near Bluff Creek, California, discovered enormous footprints, measuring nearly 16 inches long. Newspapers quickly nicknamed the unknown creature Bigfoot, which clearly stuck. But reports matching the description had existed for generations. Today, thousands of sightings have been reported across nearly every U.S. state and several Canadian provinces. The Pacific Northwest remains the most famous region, which, like Washington State, they have by far the most Bigfoot sightings out of any other state in America. But there are also reports that come from the Appalachian Mountains, the Ozarks, the Florida swamps, the Rocky Mountains, and even parts of New England. Witnesses come from every imaginable background: hunters, police officers, military personnel, wildlife biologists, park rangers, loggers, farmers, backpackers, entire families. Some desperately avoid publicity after sharing what they witnessed, and others just they never tell anyone. They might tell their family, that'd be it. Descriptions remain surprisingly consistent. Most witnesses estimate the creature stands between 7 and 10 feet tall. Its shoulders appear incredibly broad, its body covered in dark brown, black, or reddish hair, walks upright, and its stride is unusually long. I guess compared to a human's, because for someone that tall, that'd probably track pretty well. Huh. Yeah. The manager has questions while recording. It's okay. Many witnesses describe massive footprints measuring between 15 and 24 inches long. Others report a powerful odor, often compared to wet dog, rotting vegetation, sulfur, or decay. Some hear haunting screams echoing through the forest. Others report loud wood knocks, large rocks thrown from impossible distances, heavy footsteps surrounding campsites at night, or complete silence. A silence so unnatural that birds, insects, and other wildlife seem to disappear all at once. Scientists remain skeptical because no one confirmed body, skeleton, or DNA evidence has ever been proven that to prove that Bigfoot exists. Sure, we'll go with that. Yet the reports continue year after year, generation after generation. So, back to good old Teddy Roosevelt. In 1893, years before becoming president, Teddy Roosevelt published a book titled The Wilderness Hunter. Most of the book discusses wildlife hunting, conservation, and life in the American frontier, but tucked inside one chapter is something unexpected: a story told to Roosevelt by an experienced mountain trapper named Bauman. Roosevelt specifically noted that Bauman was an honest man, someone who had spent years surviving in a remote wilderness, someone not known for investigating ghost stories. According to Roosevelt, Bauman and his trapping partner entered an isolated valley somewhere deep within the Rocky Mountains, and immediately they realized something else was already there, and whatever it was, we don't know. Now, here's where the story takes its most famous turn. One thing that's important to clear up before we continue is a common misconception. Despite countless internet articles and videos claiming Theodore Roosevelt personally saw Bigfoot, he never actually wrote that he came face to face with the creature. Instead, the story comes from his 1983 book that we just mentioned, where he recounts an encounter told to him by Bauman. So he basically did what I'm doing now, but back in 1893. Roosevelt believed that Bauman was a reliable outdoorsman, and even though he didn't say, yes, this is proven fact, there was no reason not to believe him. And that alone is significant. Roosevelt had spent many years around hunters, ranchers, guides, and frontiersmen. He knew the difference between someone looking for attention and someone genuinely shaken by something they couldn't explain. According to Roosevelt, Bauman and another trapper were working deep in an isolated valley in the Rocky Mountains. The location wasn't identified, but Roosevelt described it as remote enough that very few people have ever traveled there. The two men had established a small trapping camp and planned to stay for several days. The first day passed quietly, but when they returned to camp that evening, something just wasn't right. Their supplies had been disturbed, not stolen, just moved. You know, like when you come home and you're like, oh, I thought I had left that cup over here. Stuff like that. Blankets had been tossed around, cooking equipment had been shifted. The camp looked as though something had wandered through it. At first, they blamed a bear. After all, bears frequently raid campsites, but something just didn't quite fit with that. So the following morning, they noticed tracks, not paw prints, footprints. Footprints far larger than any man. Bauman reportedly believed they resembled human feet, only much larger. The footprints seemed to circle the camp rather than just like pass through it, so it like checked everything out and circled around, and it didn't just go doo 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 doo. No, it went doo 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 doo. Yeah. Again, they assumed there had to be an explanation. There had to be something to figure this out. Perhaps another trapper, perhaps someone playing a prank. Although that seemed unlikely considering how isolated they were, still they continued setting their trap lines. The strange activity continued. Each evening something returned. Branches snapped around the camp. Heavy footsteps echoed through the trees. The men occasionally caught glimpses of movement just beyond the firelight. Whatever it was never stopped fully into view. It like never got where they could fully see it. Daggum. Instead, it just like watched creepily, like a stalker, always keeping just enough distance. So imagine trying to sleep knowing something much larger than you was walking circles around your tent, something intelligent enough to stay hidden. It almost seemed curious or territorial. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to sleep. There'd be no sleeping on that trip. Americus would be sitting up all night like, what gonna happen? One night, Bauman claimed they heard a long, eerie sound echo through the valley. Not the howl of a wolf, not the scream of a mountain lion, not the call of an elk, something unfamiliar. The sound reportedly raised the hair on the back of their necks. Even experienced woodsmen sometimes encounter sounds they can't identify, but according to Bauman, this felt different. And we'll put elk sounds at that part so y'all can know what an elk would, put some elk sounds in the background for y'all. The next morning, the men separated to check different trap lines. When Bauman returned to camp, everything had changed. His partner wasn't waiting. The camp was unusually quiet. There was no greeting, no movement, just silence. Then he found him. According to Roosevelt's account, Bauman discovered his trapping partner laying dead near the campsite. The man's neck had been broken. Nearby were the same enormous footprints. Bauman became convinced that whatever had been stalking them was responsible. Terrified, he abandoned the camp immediately and never returned. Roosevelt admitted there was no way to verify exactly what happened. It could have been a bear. He could have misunderstood what he saw. But Roosevelt felt the story deserved to be preserved exactly as it had been told to him. And that's what makes this story so fascinating. It isn't a modern internet legend where it's been blown out of proportion. It isn't something invented for YouTube. It's a story written down in 1893 by one of the most respected outdoorsmen and presidents in American history. Roosevelt never claimed he had proof. He never declared Bigfoot existed. He simply recorded the account of a man he believed was sincere. More than 130 years later, people are still debating it. So, did Theodore Roosevelt meet Bigfoot? Not directly. But he met a man who believed he had, and Roosevelt thought that story was credible enough to include in one of his own books, preserving it for future generations. Whether Bauman encountered an unknown animal, a tragic accident he couldn't explain, or something that still hides in America's wilderness, we'll probably never know. But maybe that's why the legend had survived for centuries. Some mysteries refuse to stay buried. If you've ever had an unexplained experience in the woods, heard a strange sound while camping, or know a local Bigfoot legend from your hometown, let us know in the comments. We might tell it on here, like a little TikTok video about it. If you enjoyed today's deep dive into one of America's oldest mysteries, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Sinister Sips Investigates on Spotify. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep searching for the truth, and remember, sometimes the strangest stories aren't the ones that are proven, they're the ones that refuse to disappear.